And you are?
Rio.
Thank you. Thank you, Rio. So I've got your questions that you have asked me to ask you. So we're going to start with, what was your role within this production?
In this production, due to unfortunate circumstances, I wasn't actually an actor, so I was given other roles to help out with the whole production, whether it was helping other people with their work or covering for others if they were ill one day, or filled in their spot and then kept them up to date with it. But I was also working with the sound and the technical things, so my involvement with the sound was greater than my involvement in lighting, but I did help out where needed, so it was helping out with everyone else, and it was also working with the sound when it came to the actual show.
So when you think about because you became kind of quite important, I think, in providing an infrastructure support for people, because there was a bit of a problem with various attendances due to people being unwell, you sort of had to flick between lots of things. So was that a challenge in any way? And
sometimes it was a challenge, because sometimes I had to push some work behind, like working with some of the sound. I had to save that for later on, so I could jump in someone else's spot, reading their lines or reading some other cues. Sometimes if two people weren't there, it was a thing of having to read both of their lines. And sometimes with the body, I didn't know all the movements. I didn't know every single movement. So when it came to they needed my body there, I had to quickly learn that little piece of movement so it felt right for the others.
So do you feel that you developed any strategies for doing that?
It was a strategy of keeping one eye on all the technical stuff and one eye on them. I had to kind of like multi-vision it, and every once in a while check on what they were doing, so I had the rough idea of everything that was happening and all the changes. So at the end of each hour of a session, I would ask someone, has anything changed within this hour, anything script-wise or line-wise or movement-wise, so they can keep me updated like every hour, so I have a rough idea of what is going on all the times.
So with that role, thinking about that role, is there anything, do you think, that could have been put in place either by you or perhaps by organisationally, that would have supported you better in doing that?
I think having a more structured list or a more certain, definite instructions to be given, or listing myself would definitely be easier, because I had the idea that I had to help people and fill in for people when need be. I didn't know what was going to happen each and every day, because I didn't know if people were going to be ill that day. Because if everyone was in, I could focus the whole day on all the other production stuff. But when the day came up and someone was missing, it was last minute me jumping in. So maybe more times notice of, you will need to take over this role for this day. That would be more helpful for me and everyone else. Or if I had, I think, a list of things for each day.
Was there a rehearsal schedule for you to access?
There was a rehearsal schedule for me to access, so I knew when they were rehearsing, because I was also in at those times. So I knew when things were going on, but that was mainly for the rehearsal. I had to write for myself what I was going to be doing for that day. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. So, next question. So did you set yourself, knowing that this was going to be a bit of a disruptive process for you, what was your personal goal? What did you set yourself?
I gave myself two personal goals. One of them, which was more of a loose-space goal, was to try and help things go as smoothly as possible. So things were much easier for the people actually in the performance, to help them think go smoothly, whether it's just quickly jumping in or help them read out a couple of cues. And my other goal was to make sure all the technical stuff for the show was good, I guess, up to date, and all the cues were in the right moment in the scripts. So the sound was successful on the night of the show. That was
great. So I think you've kind of answered this in part about how you went along achieving this. Did you employ any kind of organisational strategies to help you do
At the
that?
end of twice each rehearsal day, I would speak to our director and I would let her know how it's going along and if she needed me to do it, because I had a lot of ideas put forward, but at the end of the day her word was essentially final when it came to sound. So it was kind of like for about 10 minutes, 10-minute intervals, I would ask her if there's anything that needed to be done, certainly done, or anything that needs to be improved on when it's sound-wise. So it was kind of a bit of back and forth, a good back and forth between me and the main director of the show.
So did you feel that you had a good relationship with the
Yes,
visiting director?
I do believe we had a nice bit of communication, a bit of back and forth listening to each other's thoughts on it. It wasn't me just listening to everything she said and going along with it. If there was an idea that I liked, whether it was in the show, whether it was like a way a line could be, or a way it could be, or whether it came to sounds, like what sound could be used in this position. It was, if I had an idea, I felt comfortable that I could tell her that idea and that she would take it into consideration or tell me if it was a good idea, and even if she told me if it was a bad idea. Yeah.
Great. So, thinking about how you prepared for going to that first venue, what did you prepare technically in your own space to get yourself ready?
In my own space, I went through the script about 5-10 times, putting out where the cues were going to be for this first show. I put down where each song would be played, and here trying to figure out how on the laptop how the sound would be played, because that was the equipment that was available to me in this location. How to play each sound and how to make it quieter to fade out so it wasn't a sharp stop. Because this is the first time I've done something to do technical wise with the show, so it was a learning experience with me, trying to figure out how to get everything to work. So it took me a little bit of time to get used to it, but after a couple of multiple tries of trying to work out, just even starting with a laptop, I managed to figure out how to make it sound smoother in the show. What
were the challenges of working in your home space before you went off to?
In this home space, we don't have much sound equipment. We have a speaker, so I was connected to the speaker, but all I had was either a phone or a laptop, and the lighting is limited.
So when you say the lighting was limited?
We have one lighting state,
okay,
which is on or off in this area. And the sounds is also limited because we have one speaker, so it couldn't project as loud throughout the whole thing as it may have done in the home show.
So, bearing in mind that you didn't have an awful lot of technical infrastructure here, you weren't able to kind of rig any lights or anything, what did you do? How did you prepare so that when you made the transition to the home performance,
we found out what equipment would be available to me at this at the location, which was, we had speakers which were above the audience, so they would definitely be able to hear it. We had a lighting panel which could make the lighting harsher. It was a fade lighting, but the equipment was quite similar because all I had at the equipment was a laptop, which was very similar to here. So once I got used to it here, I knew what I could do at the home venue. It was very similar, which was a laptop. So it was quite easy for me to transition there. But the volumes had to be different because the speakers were much louder at the venue than here itself. So I had to adjust all the volume, make it genuinely quieter in general.
So thinking about that home performance, did it provide any challenges? And so this is a twofold question. Did it provide any challenges? And was it useful in preparing you for moving forward?
It was useful as I could find out what sounds worked I guess, because in all the rehearsals, we knew what sound we were using, but when it came to the actual show, how it worked with the audience in mind too, how it kind of reacted to them. And some of the alarms were, as they're meant to be, quite harsh, but they were too loud over when they were speaking, because they spoke during some of the noises. So the difficulty was to softly and gently make it quieter without making it just harshly go quieter, so the audience noticed. Just gently turn it down so it doesn't, it isn't jarring for them. It's okay, it's going quieter now I can properly hear what they are saying, because the speakers weren't of the highest quality, and it was quite difficult working with those speakers, because with those it was either really too loud or quite quiet, so it was really hard to find a midpoint.
So based on that, what did you decide to maybe develop moving forward into the arts depot?
I think in general we might have to change some of the sounds for the art depot, because some of the sounds kind of got repetitive, like the alarm in the end scene. I think it would be an idea of generally just kind of changing that noise or scrapping when it goes, because in the final scene they say their lines as the sound is going on. I think we'd have to change it to be before they speak, just so you can actually properly hear everything they're saying. And it would have to be generally just quieter, not like silent, but a quieter noise, because it is quite loud, and sometimes they have to, my cue is their cue.
Do you have information about the venue you're going to be moving
I do. It's the Arts Depot. There's going to be much more lighting available, and I don't know too much about the lighting, but I know that there will be different lighting states and different colours when it comes to lighting. And when it comes to sound, I know that the equipment we'd be able to easily adjust and even loop some of the noises, and there's equipment to help it fade out, so instead of like me manually having to scroll down the volume, all I'd have to do is press a button and it would itself fade down and automatically connect to the next sound.
Great. So a couple of last questions you've posed. So the first thing was, if time and money was no object, how would you have improved the show or changed the show yourself?
I think because it takes quite a long time to find out the sound, find different sounds that work. If time was an object, I think we'd find a wide selection of different noises to play, different alarm clocks to play in the last scene, so it's all different. If money was no object, I think the speaker system, the volume and the equipment would try to find something that would make things much easier for me personally, so I don't have to manually turn down the volume like at the next venue that we're going to, something that make things easier so I don't have to completely pay full attention to all the equipment, and so I can follow the script as well.
When you thinking about it from a creative perspective, is there anything, you've been involved in so many aspects of this show, is there anything, if you'd have been given carte blanche to do whatever you wanted, is there anything you'd have changed creatively about the process?
That's a good question. I think I would like to have had the sound and the sound and the lighting, and also the actors play off each other in some parts quite well to make things either more funny or more dramatic. Like with the cyst part, because the lighting wasn't the greatest, it was just one constant say, and it was somewhat funny because it was like bodies, but if we could have dramatic lighting, or like dramatic lighting that makes it sound dramatic but the lines are quite silly, so it kind of makes it funnier to the audience, or something where the audience or the character said something, and because they say something, a noise plays, or they say something quite dramatic, the lights dim down, so it gives the atmosphere of like, oh, this is a serious moment, but because of what we were provided with, we didn't have that full didn't have that full capacity of what we'll be able to do.
Okay, and one final question. What do you feel your strengths were within the role that you ended up undertaking?
I say my biggest strength would be able to adapt, because this is completely different to anything I've ever done before. I'm always normally the one on stage. So I had to quickly adapt into being able to figure out how the sound works, figure out how to quickly follow a script and do all this. And I managed to pick it up quite quickly so I could help more with the actual, making things easier for the actors. So I definitely think my strongest point was adapting, and another strong point would be helping come up with some of the ideas, not all the ideas, but coming up with some of the lighting or sound ideas, like some of the alarms, how long they should be going on for, or how loud they should be.
Do you think there might be an opportunity for you to add a little bit more before you end up at the Arts Depot?
I definitely think so. I think especially when we're there, we'll be able to see the full scale of what we will be able to do with there. And I hope that once we're there, we'll be able to see like how well it will go.
Great, thank you.